When I think of Pascagoula, Mississippi, that sleepy little town, two things immediately come to mind. The time a squirrel caused a church house to break out in revival, and the Pascagoula UFO incident.
Last October, in the quiet Mississippi town of Pascagoula, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker told of a strange craft landing near their fishing site and of being taken aboard by three unearthly creatures.
Now, I'm not really into UFOs, to be honest.
From people who claim to have seen aliens.
The idea of aliens always gave me the heebie-jeebies. That's not to say that I totally believed in the concept of alien abductions. Like a lot of people, just skeptical about it, you know.
They were about 3 feet tall.
Maybe this high.
Their skin looked like it was made of marshmallow.
But man, did the heebie-jeebies remain. And the idea of extraterrestrials only became more creepy when I saw the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. Oh, that right there. Oh. If anything, Fire in the Sky made me absolutely not want to believe.
They are unable to move.
And the beings were standing around me.
But there's one story, one abduction account in particular, that just always made me lean a little bit towards the side of. So you telling me some of this mess might be real? It was the night of October 11th, 1973. Two local shipyard workers, 45-year-old Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker, a relative of Hickson's, were fishing on the west bank of the Pascagoula River. They had finished work at F.B. Walker and Sons shipyard and were fishing on a pier. After catching a few hardheads and a couple of croakers, they moved to the bank near the shipyard, where Charles had previously caught some redfish and speckled trout. Calvin Parker, the younger of the two, was new to the area. He had seen posted signs and was nervous about fishing in this spot, but Hickson assured him that it was all right. In an interview with Country Roads magazine, Calvin Parker says this: "I distinctly remember I was looking at a boat across. It was an old oar boat that they do the weather with, and it was made out of steel. And I was thinking to myself, now how does something made of steel float? That's where my mind was. And that's when I noticed the blue, hazy lights coming in from behind." Thinking the lights were the police, he turned over to Hickson and said, "Charlie, we in trouble. You lied to me. We're fixing to go to jail." But it was not the police.
Sheriff Diamond, can you tell me just what happened that night?
No, sir, I can't. All I can tell you is there was two men came into the sheriff's department approximately 8:30 and 9 o'clock. They were all excited, upset, wanting to climb the walls, hysterical, crying. That's actually all I know is what happened. I mean, as far as me seeing what happened, I don't know.
The two men said they saw a long, ovular craft floating around 2 feet above the ground, emitting a blindingly bright light.
I guess that's when I heard it. It was some kind of zipping sound. And when I turned around, in this area out here, about 40 or 50 feet out there, there was some kind of craft, you know. It looked like it's going to come right onto the ground. But it came on down and hovered about a foot and a half or 2 feet off of the ground. We didn't know what to do, you know. The river behind us and that out there not knowing what it was.
They said three bulky-looking creatures came out.
It was real bright light, and three things appeared in the doorway. They seemed to just glide out of the craft. They never touched the ground. They seemed to just glide across, and two of them took me by the arms from the side, and one took hold of Calvin, and I seen Calvin go limp, and I didn't know it then, but he had fainted.
Calvin Parker was more shaken by the event. His first instinct, which Hickson initially agreed with, was not to tell anyone what happened to him. In an interview given September 2021, Calvin Parker said the men returned to their car to find the passenger door window shattered, although still in place. When they opened it, it fell out of the frame. On the drive back home, Hickson changed his mind about telling somebody. Their first instinct was to go to the Mississippi Press of Pascagoula, but it was after 8 p.m. and there was no reporter, so they went to the Pascagoula Sheriff's Office. By the way, the Wikipedia says they arrived at the sheriff's office around 11 p.m., but that's not true, according to the sheriff himself.
Well, I understand we had a report earlier this morning that it was around 11 or 11:15, but it was earlier than that.
It was around 8 o'clock last night is when it happened, and they were in the sheriff's office around 5 minutes till 9.
And also it says Parker was 17, but he was actually 19.
The blue light, it had blue flashing lights as it was, approaching the ground, but then they went out. And when the opening appeared, some source of light came from the inside. It was just almost blinding.
In fact, for about 3 or 4 days, I had something like a bad welding flash in my eyes.
These blue hazy lights was reflected from behind, so that's about the time I stood up and looked behind to see what it was, what really was back there. And it was 3 bulky-looking creatures.
But
Did you think it was people coming out at first?
Well, I kind of thought it was people at first, off like that. But of course, when they appeared there in front of me, it was the most shock I've ever had in my life.
I felt a shot or something in my arm, and that just calmed me. It's like a calming agent.
And while it is still very difficult for us to believe that a spaceship landed and that robot-type creatures came out and actually took these 2 people into the spaceship, these men, in my opinion, believed that they saw this, and that they were being honest in reporting what they have reported.
As unbelievable as it sounds so far, what happens inside the craft is absolutely mind-boggling. But before we go further, I want to address the first question I had when I heard the story, and that is, how much were these men drinking? Well, according to Captain Glenn Ryder of the sheriff's office, they were not drunk. It was only after being released by the deputies that Charles Hickson went and got hold of some whiskey so he could calm down. My second question was, well, surely didn't anybody else besides these 2 men see the aircraft? Turns out, yes, there were other witnesses.
Mr. Booth, tell me what happened that night in October.
Well, I got up and had turned off the TV and come to the front door, which you can see right behind me. Just as usual, checking to see if it was locked. So I looked out the window at the top, and naturally I saw this object above the street light out there. So naturally it caught my eye where the lights was on it. Couldn't hear any racket or anything. So I opened the door after a few seconds to step out to see if I could really tell what it was. It just took off.
Can you describe it?
Well, it was round, had lights all the way around it, turning in a counter-clockwise motion. It had a dome on top with a bright light shining out through the top of it. To tell the actual figure of it or anything, you couldn't tell. You could just see the lights and the one on top.
There's also a really interesting story from Mike Cataldo, who saw the craft with his 2 friends from their Volkswagen Beetle while traveling Highway 90 to Biloxi. Mike reported the spacecraft with the blue lights matching the description that we heard earlier, the Keesler Air Force Base, where nobody really did anything with it. It wouldn't be until 2001 that Mike gets the story to the Associated Press.
This is what we understand, Sheriff Diamond, that the 2 gentlemen, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, are being checked out for radiation at this time.
One of the men suffered a nervous breakdown and is still under treatment.
I understand, Sheriff Diamond, that the youngest man, 18 years old, I believe, Calvin Parker, is still in quite a bit of state of shock. And that's very, very much true. He's still very, very upset.
What reportedly happened inside the craft left Calvin Parker traumatized. Of the 2 men, he seemed to have the hardest time grappling with the events. The shock of the men only added to their believability. But they would go on to gain even more credibility after the Pascagoula Sheriff's Department made a secret audio recording.
And then we left the room and recorded all the conversation they had.
I don't tell you that. I couldn't take this for it. I just tell you, I know you don't get the bad, get some nerve pills or something, some doctor or something. I can stand it. I'm not going on.
And at one time, he wanted to climb the wall. That's how nervous and how shook up he was.
And one of them kept wanting to pray. And he said, after all I went through on this earth, he said, why should I have to see something like this?
After they brought us out of that room and listened to that tape, then they decided something had happened to us.
And they didn't have a neck. They had, it seemed to come directly to their shoulders. And they had something, it came out to a point about where a nose would be, and on each side, the ears. And I believe that they looked like they were a little longer on the ears than the nose.
And when they got us, they grabbed us by the shoulder right there. And that's when I felt the injection.
I didn't know it, I knew my heart had just froze up just like it. I couldn't move, just like a step of rest.
And I just seemed to lift up to the same height they were off the ground, and we just moved into the craft.
Once inside the craft, everything happened really quickly. Both men described a unique scanning device.
This eye, well, I keep referring to it as an eye, and it moved up in front of me about this close. Mm-hmm. And it started right at my eyes, looking me right in the eye.
And then it went over my entire body. I'm assuming it did, because when it went down like this, I seemed to be suspended there, and the next time I seen it, it was coming back up over this way.
And it started rotating around my head, and it was clicking every time it would go. And then it got in front of me and just shot back up into the ceiling.
And I just want to add, I would prefer this style of UFO examination over the style shown in Fire in the Sky, which depicts the 1975 abduction of Travis Walton. Talk about never go to the optometrist again.
The two men were questioned under hypnosis and lie detectors, but their story remained intact.
We all find this hard to believe, but something happened to them. Their descriptions, their stories matched. They were interrogated separately and then left in a room together to discuss it, and it was all the same story all the time.
Tell me about the lie detector test.
They had in their mind that it was just a big joke. And if I understand it correctly, they ran one test on Mr. Hickson. The machine showed that he was telling the truth. Then they run another one. And then the examiner, he began to wonder himself. So he ran the third test, and he believed just what Mr. Hickson had told him.
Daddy's taken numerous polygraphs, been under hypnosis. And I understand it's almost impossible to lie under hypnosis, and it's never changed.
In addition to the three bulky mechanical creatures, there was a creature that remained inside the craft the whole time.
And that's when the female creature come out, or what I call the female. And she took her right hand and the two middle fingers on that. She started running down my throat. Well, I got to choking, and I was having a hard time breathing. Well, she took out her fingers and just kind of stood there and kind of looked at me. Now, she didn't say nothing, but mentally I felt like she said, "We're not gonna harm you."
Now, it's enough to say you saw a UFO to give you trouble these days in some towns. To be taken aboard is just a suspect idea. But somehow, if the creatures don't give you a message, you're just a touch less incredible.
When they brought me from the craft that along this area here, and they didn't drop me, they just released me back to the ground. And I fell. I don't know why my legs were weak. I don't know why it was the fright or what it was, but I fell onto the ground. And that's when I seen Calvin. He's standing right over here in this area, and he was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched like that.
I was standing there facing the river with my arms stretched out like that. And I couldn't move them. I mean, I just took a minute just to get them freed up. And that's when I heard Charlie calling me in the back.
I was trying to make my way toward him, and I was crawling. I couldn't get my legs to working.
He was down on the ground. I mean, he said he lost control of his legs. And I didn't lose control because I never had no control. So anyhow, Charlie was on the ground.
But before I got to him, the strength of whatever it was came back to my legs, and I was getting up on my feet, and I heard the same sound I'd heard before, a zipping sound, and I glanced around.
And we turned around and faced the craft, which is sitting right about here.
And I saw the blue flashing lights, and the craft was just gone.
It picked straight up and went up a little ways, then it just disappeared.
It was like they had a job to do, and they came and they did it.
I think there has to be a reason why Calvin and me was picked.
So what do we make of this? Personally, I think there's something to it, especially considering the UFO flap of the 1970s. That's where similar sightings were reported across other parts of the country. And I found this report from 1973 particularly interesting since it involves a strange glowing underwater object, also in the Pascagoula River. Years later, witnesses Maria and Jerry Blair would also come forward with descriptions seeming to confirm what happened to Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson. And I think it's worth noting that prior to this, there was a saucer craze toward the end of the 1940s. You'd maybe want to chalk that up to, well, everyone heard about Roswell in '47 and their imaginations just went wild. But I think there might be some other explanation. This is personal opinion now, okay? But maybe things really started to kick off in a major way with post-World War II advancements after the United States brought in over here 1,600 German scientists for Operation Paperclip. That kicked off around 1945, okay? So just thinking out loud here, we can do some digging into this topic if y'all are interested, but I just found it curious that some of these guys like Werner von Braun and Ernst Steinhoff were inducted into the International Space Hall of Fame in 1976 and 1979, respectively. Stuff going on in the 1970s is what I'm getting at. I firmly believe that we're not alone, but not in the sense that you might think. I recommend apocryphal writings with caution, but I found the books of Enoch to be utterly fascinating, mind-boggling. Is the government involved? If so, I'm pretty sure they've had help. Are there entities unlike us who have an interest in us? These two men right here would have told you yes. I just want to say I wish the families well of these two men. They have since passed on, but this is the same story they carried to their grave. And like I said, I hope the family has peace. This one was is somewhat close to home, and that's why I wanted to cover it, because it's the one story that the UFO account that it's hard for me not to believe it. Huge thank you to everyone still supporting us on Patreon. Please consider supporting us over there. Between that and making toys, that's keeping the lights on at Steady Crafting. So thank you so much for considering us. And check out the super thanks. I don't really know what it is, but my wife said that I think it's enabled for this video. So she said mention it. So super thanks. I do super thank y'all for watching this video. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Until next time, keep on steady crafting. Crafsman, you're supposed to do craft videos. Hold up. This was about spacecraft.